Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the Calgary Flames, a team that I feel like could actually go out there and make the playoffs. But before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So Calgary's been a team that has missed the playoffs 2 years in a row, and I feel like entering this season probably wasn't a side that I expected to go out and make the playoffs. And I even did a video at the start of the year when they got off to a good start and said that it probably wouldn't be something that could be sustained. But here we are, getting to be about 2/3 of the way through this season, and they are still there, currently occupying a wildcard spot. So I can be wrong, definitely, for sure. We've kind of highlighted that in a video here recently about the Ottawa Senators and how they may actually make the playoffs. But it wasn't just me. I did a poll, and 74% of you said that you didn't expect Calgary to make the playoffs. Thing is, that was just 2 weeks ago. So the Flames are kind of giving us an opportunity to do some self-reflection here to see if maybe they could prove us wrong and if we're going to actually say, yeah, I was wrong. So now, they're kind of being brought up. Let's talk about Calgary. And the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about them in today's video was just because I feel like we've really been focusing on the Eastern Conference and the playoff push there because there's so many teams, and we'll be talking about that again. But the West is a little bit different than the East, so looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they are the final team in a wildcard spot. They have 7 teams that are within 7 points of them at the moment. Meanwhile, the Calgary Flames have just 4. And the biggest thing that's notable here is the fact that out of the teams that are within 4 points, there are 4 for Tampa Bay that are very, very close compared to just 1 for the Calgary Flames. So Tampa Bay has more teams that are within 7 by far, and then they also have more teams that are within 4 points, which is just 2 wins. So you can say that Tampa Bay probably is feeling more pressure compared to a team like Calgary, especially considering some of the teams that Calgary is, dealing with that are below them in the standings. Some of those teams being the St. Louis Blues, Anaheim Ducks, and then, of course, the Utah Hockey Club, and then finally the Vancouver Canucks. Now, 3 of these 4 teams I really don't think are that big of a concern in catching up to them. Anaheim is having a good year by their standards, but they've kind of just been staying about 500 for the year, and I don't actually know if they're going to be able to, again, do enough to move past all these teams. Then you have the St. Louis Blues. Jim Montgomery in the side got off to a good start when he ended up getting hired, but they still are a decent-ish way from the Calgary Flames, and just I don't think have enough to go out there and surpass them again. Maybe in a better spot than Anaheim to be able to do that, but they're pretty close in the standings regardless, so that's just kind of an argument. And then you have the Utah Hockey Club, a team that had a pretty prolonged period of poor play, and they really aren't a team either that I would say really is a threat right now at the moment. Either they've got a lot of issues in terms of their naming rights, which I don't think matters for the team, but in general what we saw with them in Arizona, they weren't a consistent playoff team. So 3 out of the 4, like I've already mentioned, I would say most of us would agree aren't going to be a threat, which leaves the final team in Vancouver, which I also feel like could be a threat, but at the same time too, probably won't be. Mind you, if Vancouver didn't have a terrible prolonged period of poor play, they probably would be again secure in the playoffs, but the reality is they have kind of fallen apart, and there's been a lot of things going wrong for this team in the recent memory for the year. You have, of course, the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson drama, where it just kept dragging out, and then finally JT Miller was traded, but then you're hearing about how things still are probably awkward in the locker room. That's not ideal for the team, even though Miller is now gone. Then, of course, too, you ended up seeing Thatcher Demko come back, make his season debut after being gone for a long time with an injury. His numbers are certainly not replicated from what we saw last year, where he was a Vezina finalist. And I'm not going to be really harping on him too much because, again, coming back from an injury, playing in the best league in the world is going to be difficult. But the Canucks really need some solid goaltending right now. Kevin Lankinen is probably looking to be the best goalie by the end of the year, which is probably a sign that this was not going to be Vancouver's year, even though last year they quite literally won the division. But I think one thing that could be big for Calgary in their favor is the Canucks are still kind of being talked about as a team that could possibly do a retool/rebuild, and that would mean that their roster would get depleted probably and not be in contention right away for the playoffs, whereas the Flames may not even have to really do anything at the deadline and still go on to make the postseason. I can't say that it's a guarantee. In fact, MoneyPuck.com does have the Calgary Flames having a lower chance of making it to the playoffs than Vancouver. Again, I probably imagine that part of that is just because Vancouver's roster is a little bit more enticing compared to Calgary's, but the Flames are right there with them. They're tied with points. They have more regulation wins, and I think are still poised to go out there and give the Canucks a good threat for the end of the year. And in all likelihood, I think they could go out there and win and make it. I don't know how Vancouver kind of do to finish out the year. They had a recent 3-game win streak, and at times things look better there than what they are. But at the same time, too, we've seen the inconsistency, which has been very maddening as a Canucks fan. And for the Flames, you get a Calder caliber year from Dustin Wolf. Some of these guys like Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee come out and help down the stretch as they're picked up as part of that trade with Kuzmenko and whatnot. You are going to be, again, probably hoping for more from the veterans as well, too. But I think that there is that way for them to do it. It just either means that Calgary goes out and makes the playoffs, or they are the odd man out. I don't see them being any lower than the final team, missing out on the playoffs, which would be disheartening. But I think at the same time, too, a year where they've been more competitive than maybe they would have thought. And again, if they miss out, you still could possibly have, of course, Wolf winning the Calder, which is something that hasn't been done in a long time for goalies as well as for Calgary Flames players. And this is still a year that I would hope maybe could kind of get the Flames off to the right start next year and prove a lot of people wrong, because I was kind of saying before at the start of the year, and even last season especially, the Flames were a hard team to really get a read on, and at times they're still a very hard team to get a read on, because you're wondering with, again, Weegar and Kadri, and then of course Huberdeau being kind of the leading guys, where this team could end up. But this still could be a pretty good year in that regard, even though I really had some serious doubts. So anyway, do you think the Calgary Flames will make the playoffs, or do you think they will miss? Will they be the last team out or drop even further in the standings, seeing some of these other teams surprise and move up? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you love hockey, all right.
Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.